I'm Lisa, 26F, and I thought my life was pretty great until yesterday. I've been with my boyfriend Alex, 28M, for 2 years. We met at my coworker's barbecue in summer 2019. He was the guy making everyone laugh by the grill, telling stories about his finance job, but in a way that didn't make him sound like a total jerk. We hit it off immediately over our shared hatred of Marvel movies and love of true crime podcasts. By October, we were basically living together. My best friend Jordan, 27F, has been in my life since college. She's the person who held my hair back when I had food poisoning sophomore year, drove 8 hours to help me move apartments 3 different times, and stayed up until 3 a.m. listening to me cry about my parents' divorce. When I introduced her to Alex after we'd been dating for about 6 months, I was so happy when they got along. The three of us would hang out constantly, game nights at my place, hiking trips, trying new restaurants. Jordan even helped Alex plan my surprise birthday party last year, spending hours making decorations and coordinating with all her friends. Looking back now, I wonder how much of that was real and how much was just part of her job. Yesterday, I was doing my usual Thursday money check. I freelance as a graphic designer, so my income is all over the place, and I obsessively track every penny. I was going through my bank statement when I noticed something weird, a $75 charge to my credit card from Venmo that I didn't remember making. I logged into Venmo to see what it was, and found that I'd apparently sent Jordan money for coffee and gas on Tuesday. Except I definitely didn't send her any money on Tuesday, and we didn't get coffee together. I was confused and a little worried that maybe my account had been compromised, so I called Jordan to ask if she'd received any weird payments from me. "Oh yeah," she said, sounding nervous. "I meant to text you about that. Alex sent it from your account. He said you asked him to pay me back for driving you to that doctor's appointment last week. But I'd driven myself to that appointment. And why would Alex be sending money from my Venmo account? He has his own." When I pressed her about it, she got flustered and said she had to go because she was at work. But something in her voice didn't sound right. I spent the rest of the day feeling uneasy about the whole thing. That evening, when Alex came over, I asked him about the Venmo payment. He looked genuinely confused at first, then his face changed like he'd remembered something. "Oh right, Jordan asked me to pay her back for some stuff she'd bought for you. You were in the bathroom, so I just used your account since mine wasn't logged in." But that didn't make sense either. What stuff had Jordan bought for me? And why wouldn't he just use his own phone to send money from his account? When I asked him to be more specific, he got irritated and said he couldn't remember all the details, it was just friend stuff, and I was being paranoid about nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. This morning I decided to do some digging. I went through my Venmo history more carefully and found 3 other payments to Jordan over the past 2 months that I definitely didn't send. March 15th, $65 thanks for everything. March 28th, $80 girls night coverage. April 10th, $70 appreciate you, all sent from my account, all on days when Alex had access to my phone. I confronted Jordan over lunch today. I showed her the payments and asked her to explain what was going on. She broke down immediately. Through tears, she confessed that Alex had been paying her to keep an eye on me and report back about my activities, moods, and conversations. It started about 3 months ago when she was going through a really rough financial patch. She'd been freelancing as a photographer, but work had dried up and she was behind on rent. Alex approached her and said he'd noticed she seemed stressed about money. He offered to help her out financially in exchange for what he called friendship support. He said he loved me so much and wanted to make sure I was happy, but that I tended to bottle things up and not share when I was upset. He convinced her that she'd be helping our relationship by giving him insights into my mental state, so he could be a better boyfriend. At first it seemed innocent enough. He'd ask questions like, "How did Lisa seem when you guys had coffee yesterday?" Or, "Did she mention being stressed about that work project?" But gradually, the requests became more invasive. He wanted detailed reports about our conversations, especially anything I said about him or our relationship. He asked her to pay attention to my interactions with other people, particularly male coworkers. He even asked her to try to steer our conversations toward certain topics so she could gather specific information for him. The payments were disguised as reimbursements for things like coffee dates, gas money, or shared meals. That's why I never noticed them. They looked like normal friend transactions. Jordan said she felt terrible about it, but was desperate for the money. She kept telling herself that she wasn't really betraying me because Alex genuinely seemed to care about me and want to improve our relationship. But as she was telling me all this, I started realizing how Alex had been using the information. All those times over the past few months when he seemed to know exactly what to say to make me feel better, or when he'd apologize for things before I even had a chance to bring them up, or when he'd surprise me by addressing concerns I thought I'd kept to myself. Now I knew how he'd known. The most disturbing part was when Jordan told me that last week, Alex had asked her to start taking photos of my text messages when I left my phone unattended during our hangouts. She said she'd refused, but the fact that he'd even asked made me sick. I asked her how much money we were talking about total, and she said around $600 over 3 months. My privacy and trust had been sold for $200 a month. After Jordan left, she was crying and begging me to forgive her. I sat in my car trying to process what I'd learned. I felt violated and betrayed by both of them, but in different ways. Jordan had been desperate and manipulated, but she still chose to take money in exchange for spying on me. Alex had systematically invaded my privacy and manipulated both of us for months. I don't know what to do next. Do I confront Alex? Do I break up with both of them? How do I ever trust anyone again? I feel like my whole life has been a lie for the past 3 months. Every conversation, every private moment, every vulnerability I shared with my best friend was being reported back to my boyfriend, like some kind of intelligence briefing dump. Has anyone ever dealt with anything like this? I feel completely lost. Edit. Thank you everyone for the responses. I'm reading all of them, and they're helping me realize how messed up this really is. Edit 2. For those asking, I have my Venmo set up to send me email notifications for transactions, but they go to a folder I don't check regularly. The payments looked normal enough that I didn't question them when I did see them. Update. 6 days later, I'm sorry it took me almost a week to update. The confrontation with Alex was brutal, and I honestly needed some time to process everything before I could write about it. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Your responses helped me understand that this wasn't just a communication issue or normal relationship problem. It was systematic surveillance and manipulation. I decided to confront Alex in person. I wanted to see his face when I told him I knew what he'd been doing. When he came over last Tuesday night, I had printed out screenshots of all the Venmo transactions and some notes I'd made about specific instances where he'd used information that could have only come from Jordan. I laid it all out on my coffee table and said, I know you've been paying Jordan to spy on me. Explain. His face went through several expressions: surprise, panic, anger, then this cold look I'd never seen before. For a moment, he just stared at the papers, and I could practically see him calculating his response. His first attempt was denial. He said Jordan was lying, that she was probably just trying to cover up for borrowing money from me without asking. When I pointed out that the payments came from my Venmo account, he shifted tactics. Then he tried minimization. He said he'd just been checking in with Jordan because he cared about me and wanted to make sure I was okay. He claimed that I was hard to read and that he was just trying to be a more attentive boyfriend. When I asked him about specific information he'd used, like the time 2 weeks ago when he'd apologized for being too clingy right before I was planning to have that exact conversation with him, he got defensive. So, what if I pay attention to how you're feeling? So, what if I try to address problems before they become fights? I was trying to be a good boyfriend. I told him that getting information about my private thoughts and feelings through a paid informant wasn't being a good boyfriend. It was being a stalker. That's when he really lost it. He started yelling about how I was impossible to communicate with and how I never shared anything real with him. He said that if I'd just been more open and honest, he wouldn't have needed to find other ways to understand what was going on with me. He actually tried to turn it around and make it my fault. Said I was emotionally unavailable and that he'd been forced to get information from Jordan because I wouldn't talk to him directly. I pointed out that I'd never had communication problems in previous relationships, and that maybe if he'd tried actually asking me how I was feeling instead of paying my friend to spy on me, we might have been able to work on our communication together. That's when he said something that made my blood run cold. You think you're so private and independent, but you tell Jordan everything anyway. I was just cutting out the middleman. The entitlement in that statement. Like he was owed access to every private conversation I had with my friends. I told him we were done. He immediately switched to bargaining mode. He'd stop paying Jordan. We could go to couples therapy. He'd work on his trust issues. But I was already mentally checked out. This wasn't a trust issue or a communication problem. This was systematic surveillance. He'd turned my best friend into an informant and had been manipulating both of us for months. When he realized I was serious about breaking up, he got nasty. He said I was throwing away the best relationship I'd ever have over nothing. He said I was too damaged from my parents' divorce to recognize real love when I saw it. He also said some things about Jordan that I won't repeat, but basically called her a desperate loser who'd sell out her friends for pocket change. I told him to get out of my apartment. He left, but not before saying that I'd regret this, and that he'd been the only person who really understood me. After he left, I called my sister and told her everything. She came over immediately and stayed the night because I was too shaken up to be alone. I've been staying with her for the past few days while I figure out my next steps. I don't feel safe in my apartment right now because Alex has a key and knows my schedule too well. Jordan has texted me several times. She's offered to pay me back all the money and says she wants to explain everything in person. Part of me wants to hear her out, but I'm not ready yet. I keep thinking about all the conversations we had over the past 3 months. Every time I confided in her about relationship problems, she was taking mental notes for her next report to Alex. Every time I trusted her with something personal, she was probably already planning how to relay it to him. The betrayal from her almost hurts worse than Alex's behavior, because I expected him to be loyal to me as my boyfriend, but I never imagined I had to worry about my best friend being bought off. I'm looking at apartments in different neighborhoods. I need a fresh start somewhere Alex can't easily find me. I'm also thinking about changing jobs. We work in related fields and have some mutual professional contacts. I'm worried about him trying to sabotage my career or continuing to gather information about my life through work connections. This whole experience has made me realize how isolated I'd become. I used to have a bigger circle of friends, but over the past year I'd started declining invitations and spending most of my social time with just Jordan and Alex. Now I'm wondering if that was part of his strategy, to make Jordan my primary source of social support so she'd have more access to information about me. I feel like I need to rebuild my entire social life from scratch, and I don't even know where to start. Update 3 weeks later. Quick update since some people have been asking how I'm doing. I found a new apartment. It's about 20 minutes from my old place, in a building with good security. I'm moving in this weekend. Alex doesn't know the address, and I plan to keep it that way. The move has been complicated because I've been avoiding my old apartment as much as possible. My sister and a couple of coworkers have been helping me pack when Alex is at work, and my landlord agreed to let me out of my lease early after I explained the situation. Alex has tried to contact me a few times. He sent flowers to my office with a note saying he was sorry for everything and wanted to work things out. I threw them away immediately. He also somehow got my sister's phone number and called her, asking her to talk sense into me. She told him that if he contacted any member of my family again, she'd call the police. Last week he showed up at a coffee shop near my work. I don't think he was following me. I think he was just hoping to run into me since he knows my usual spots. When he saw me, he tried to approach my table, but I left immediately. He followed me outside and kept trying to talk to me, saying he missed me and that we could fix this. I told him to leave me alone and kept walking. He didn't follow me, but the encounter left me shaken. I'm now avoiding all the places we used to go together. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. She's been really helpful in helping me understand that what Alex did was a form of psychological abuse and that it's normal for me to feel violated and paranoid after having my privacy invaded for months. She's also helping me work through my feelings about Jordan. I'm still not ready to talk to her directly, but I'm starting to understand the complexity of her situation. She was financially desperate and Alex is very good at manipulation. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me make sense of how it happened. Work has been a good distraction. I told my boss a general version of what happened, just that I was dealing with a personal situation and might need some schedule flexibility, and she's been very supportive. I've also started reconnecting with some old friends I'd lost touch with. It's been nice to remember that I used to have a social life outside of Alex and Jordan. The hardest part is the paranoia. I find myself constantly wondering if people are being genuine with me, or if they have hidden motives. When coworkers ask about my weekend plans, I wonder if they're just making conversation, or if someone asked them to find out information about me. I know this will get better with time and therapy, but right now it's hard to trust anyone completely. Jordan sent me a long email last week. She apologized again and explained more about how Alex had approached her and gradually escalated his requests for information. She also said she'd started seeing a therapist to work through her own feelings about being manipulated. She offered to meet in person to answer any questions I might have about what she reported to Alex or how their arrangement worked. Part of me wants to know exactly what information was shared, but part of me thinks it would just make me feel worse. I'm not ready to forgive her yet, but I appreciate that she's trying to take responsibility for her actions. I think the most important thing I've learned from this experience is to trust my instincts. There were several times over the past few months when I felt like something was off, like when Alex seemed to know things about me that I didn't remember telling him, or when Jordan would steer our conversations in weird directions. I talked myself out of those feelings because I didn't want to seem paranoid or accusatory. Now I know that if something feels wrong, it probably is. Update, 2 months later. I'm settled into my new apartment and starting to feel like myself again. The therapy has been really helpful, and I'm sleeping better now that I'm not constantly worried about being watched or monitored. Alex tried to contact me one more time about a month ago. He sent a letter to my sister's house. I guess he figured I'd eventually see it there, with a long apology and a request to meet for closure. I didn't respond, and I haven't heard from him since. I did eventually meet with Jordan for coffee last week. It was awkward and emotional, but I'm glad we talked. She gave me a full accounting of what she'd reported to Alex and when. It was more extensive than I'd realized. He'd been getting weekly summaries of my activities, moods, and conversations for almost 4 months. She also explained how the arrangement had started and escalated. At first, Alex had just asked casual questions about how I seemed when we hung out. But gradually, he started requesting more specific information and paying her more money for detailed reports. By the end, he was asking her to try to influence my behavior, like encouraging me to skip social events with other friends or trying to get me to share specific information that he was curious about. She said she'd felt increasingly uncomfortable with what she was doing, but she was in such a desperate financial situation that she kept justifying it to herself. She also said that Alex was very good at making her feel like she was helping our relationship rather than betraying our friendship. I told her that I understood she'd been in a difficult position, but that I wasn't ready to rebuild our friendship. The trust is just too broken right now. She said she understood, and that she'd continue working with her therapist on understanding how she'd been manipulated and making sure she never put herself in a position to be exploited like that again. It was actually a relief to have that conversation. I'd been carrying around so much anger and hurt, and being able to express it directly to her helped me start to let go of some of it. I'm not sure if we'll ever be friends again, but I don't hate her anymore. I can see how Alex manipulated both of us, just in different ways. I've been dating someone new for the past few weeks. His name is Marcus, and we met at a book club I joined. He's patient with my need to take things slowly, and he's never once asked invasive questions about my schedule or activities. It's been interesting to experience what a normal relationship feels like after months of being with someone who is constantly monitoring and analyzing my behavior. With Marcus, I can just be myself without worrying that every conversation is being evaluated or reported. I'm still working on trusting my own judgment and not second-guessing every interaction, but I'm getting better at it. The biggest lesson I've learned is that privacy isn't the same thing as secrecy. I used to think that being in a relationship meant sharing everything, but now I understand that healthy relationships include respect for each other's autonomy and individual thoughts. I can be in love with someone and still have private conversations with friends. I can be committed to someone and still have thoughts and feelings that belong only to me. And none of that makes me secretive or untrustworthy. It makes me a complete person who happens to also be in a relationship. Final update, 6 months later. I think this will be my last update on this situation. It's been 6 months since I discovered what Alex and Jordan had been doing, and I wanted to share how things have turned out. Marcus and I are doing really well. We've been together for about 4 months now, and he's nothing like Alex. He asks about my day because he cares, not because he's gathering intelligence. When I go out with friends, he tells me to have fun instead of asking for detailed reports about what we did. Most importantly, he's never made me feel like I need to justify my privacy or my relationships with other people. It's been incredibly healing to be with someone who trusts me and respects my autonomy. Work is going great. I got a promotion last month, and I'm working on some really exciting projects. I think having to rebuild my confidence and trust in myself actually made me more assertive in professional situations. I've built a new circle of friends through various activities, the book club where I met Marcus, a hiking group, and some people from work. It's been nice to have social connections that aren't complicated by surveillance or betrayal. Jordan and I have had a few more conversations over the past few months. We're not close friends anymore, but we've reached a place where we can be civil and even friendly when we run into each other. She's doing well in therapy and has been working to rebuild her career and her relationships with other people who were affected by the situation. I never heard from Alex again after that letter he sent to my sister's house. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he moved to a different city for work, which is fine by me. The therapy has been invaluable. I'm much better at recognizing red flags in relationships and trusting my instincts when something feels off. I'm also more comfortable setting boundaries and saying no to things that don't feel right. The most important thing I've learned is that healthy relationships are built on trust and respect, not surveillance and control. Love doesn't mean having access to every aspect of your partner's life. It means trusting them to make good decisions and respecting their right to privacy. I used to think that being open in a relationship meant sharing every thought and feeling immediately. Now I understand that real intimacy comes from choosing to share yourself with someone because you want it, not because you're being monitored or manipulated into it. Thanks to everyone who followed this story and offered support. Your comments really helped me get through a difficult time and realize that I wasn't overreacting to what happened. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go get ready for a weekend trip with Marcus. We're going camping, and I'm looking forward to a couple of days with no cell service and no one monitoring what we're doing. Just the two of us and the woods. That's what normal relationships look like, in case anyone was wondering. Edit. Thank you for all the kind comments. And yes, the camping trip was amazing. It's incredible how relaxing it can be to just exist without worrying about who's watching or what they might think about your choices.